My HOA Karen gave my lake cabin to her son without telling me or asking for permission from anyone, so I'm building a 27-foot tall fence around their head office. Hey guys, welcome to my channel where OP shuts down an entire business over a property line dispute. Our next post is from someone who needs to watch this video right here. HOA Karen gave my lake cabin to her son. So I fenced it right to their head office. I live in a home that has a small cabin on it. The cabin was built by my grandfather in 1965, and he passed it on to me when he died. It's at the end of a point on a lake. The only neighbors are two families about 300 feet away across the lake. Both families have been there longer than I have, and they're both friends with my parents. The lake isn't big, but it's deep enough for swimming and boating. The homes were part of an HOA until about 4 years ago when the HOA dissolved due to a lack of members. They still exist as a non-profit corporation, though, and there's still a head office in a little building near us. The past president of the HOA is a friend of my parents. She lives on the lake and is basically the de facto leader of this little community. She's also kind of a Karen. I had just finished renovating my cabin after I bought it. I'd fixed up the roof, put in some new windows, redid the whole interior, and put in a new dock. I brought my girlfriend out to see it for the first time. We were having a great time until she asked me what the weird wooden pole sticking out of the ground was. It turns out it was the marker for the property line between me and my next door neighbor. I told my parents about it, and they talked to the neighbor. The neighbor said it was hers, not hers, and her husband's. She said that the previous owners sold her the extra strip of land that was actually mine to build a patio and gazebo. I should mention that both the patio and gazebo were built over the property line, and the extra land was only about 8 feet wide and extended all the way back to the road. I wasn't really bothered by any of that. I didn't want the extra strip of land anyway, and the gazebo was pretty nice. But then the Karen showed up, because the neighbor told her. I asked if we could look at the deed, and she said that it was probably in the old filing cabinet at the HOA office. She refused to let me look at it unless I had a lawyer present. Okay, so now I was getting annoyed. I called my dad, and he sent his lawyer over. He also called his buddy, who happens to be the county surveyor. The three of them met with the Karen and her husband at the HOA office. Apparently the cabin was originally built with a permit that gave it an extra 4 feet on the side, but other than that, the boundaries were correct. Because the cabin was originally built before the HOA was formed, it wasn't bound by the restrictive covenants in the same way that my neighbors were. So Karen's husband, who was trying to argue that a new survey would cost me an arm and a leg, got angry and asked why I was even bothering to fight over a few extra feet. That's when I decided to screw with him. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm not fighting over a few extra feet. I am fighting for every inch of the property that my grandfather earned by working hard in this country for 40 years. Karen's face turned bright red and she started screaming at me about how I was being a baby and a jerk over a few extra feet. My dad told her that I didn't have to listen to her and that if she had been honest with me from the start, none of this would have happened. I apologized to her for being rude, but stood my ground. Then Karen made a very sly move. She offered to let me keep the extra strip of land if I'd let her and her son use the gazebo. At this point, my dad was furious. He asked what was the son's name and drove off to find him. Turns out that the son's name was Chad. Great name. Anyway, my dad found him and handed him a stack of cash. He told him to go buy some concrete and to come back and help me set it so I could start building my fence. After that, my dad had a long talk with the Karen. After he left, she came back into the office, looking defeated. She told me that she'd given the extra strip of land to her son, because she thought it was the right thing to do. She said that I didn't deserve it because I wasn't a hard worker like her son. She said that I was a loser who sat around all day on his computer doing nothing productive. She said that she wanted to get rid of me because I was bad news for the neighborhood. Basically, she was giving me the old your kind speech. I'll admit that I was hurt by what she said, but I knew that she was wrong. I'm not perfect by any means, but I work hard as a freelance software developer. And I've got a 3.8 GPA while taking 21 credit hours at my local college. Not to mention, I've spent more than $10,000 fixing up my property while the Karens have undone anything to theirs, other than paint. I was especially offended by her calling me a loser, because her son is one of those rich kids who think they re-hot because they have money. I'm really into medieval history, especially castles and city walls. A few months ago, I ordered some supplies to build a 27-foot tall dry stone wall in my front yard. The rocks weren't delivered until a few weeks after my run, in HOA Karen, so I was finally able to start putting it up. I figured I'd make a start at the bottom of the strip of land. By the end of the day, I had built a wall about 3 feet high. About half the height of the wall I'm planning on building. When Karen saw what I was doing, she freaked out. She screamed at me about how I wasn't allowed to build something that tall. I told her that I had a permit and that the wall was on my property. She screamed at me for another minute and then went home. A couple hours later, she called the cops on me for building a safety hazard. The cop who came out talked to me and looked at my paperwork. He asked if I was sure everything was above board, and I said yes. He told me that it looked like I was in the right and that I should have a safe place to build my fence. He also suggested that I install some lights on the top of the wall so cars could see it better at night. It's almost finished and it's turning out great. The rest of the neighbors seem to like it. One of them even asked me if I could build him a wall, too. When I asked what he meant, he said that he'd like to block the view of his neighbors. Maybe I'll charge him for materials. Anyway, the Karen hasn't spoken to me since she called the police. I can hear her screaming at her son, though. Oh well, she just have to get used to it. I'm building a 27-foot tall fence around the HOA head office. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.